Okay, so what do we have for today? Oh, right. Okay, yeah, we got to go and do that anime. Yeah, we got to do that review now. So, what is this called again? Wait, When They Cry. Not sure if I've heard of this. Huh. Okay, looks cute, I guess. All right, let's see what we got then. You have my attention.
At first glance, you'd think that this is a simple little anime about a bunch of schoolgirls and their easygoing Japanese lives, right? Well, if that's what you thought, then you know nothing about this show. This is one of those series that is a frequent resident of lists that discuss about disturbing and terrifying animes. Oh yes, it certainly has a reputation of scaring many fans over the years. Originally began as a set of visual novels that some also call When the Cicadas Cry, the creator, who refers himself as Ryukishio7, wanted to make something like the works of the studio Key. But instead of making the player be emotional by the end, he wanted his audience to feel scared, like be the horror version of Key. As a result, after releasing the first batch of stories during the later half of 2002, the stories quickly spread like a virus onto several different mediums like mangas, book novels, drama CDs, live-action adaptations, and yes, even animes and OVAs where after 20 years, the tales of the strange events that happened in Hinamizawa still continue to show the many inexplicable ways of how its residents go unalive.
Like I said before, there's a lot of different versions of the story that we can look into. Not to mention all the different mediums that we can look into the story into many different ways. Like, we could watch it, we could play it, or we could read it. But for the sake of this review, what I'm going to be looking into specifically is the first two series of the anime. The original 2006 show and its follow-up, Kai. So in total, there's a good amount of episodes there, like 50 episodes. So you can imagine how with all of those, it can go and take its time to really build up the horrors. Which is actually not a lot, and it actually just goes straight into the craziness and then sends you on a mental roller coaster from there.
It's interesting to talk about the story because, in a way, it's in a bit of a category of its own. It's not really linear, and it wouldn't necessarily count as an anthology. The story of When They Cry is about this Japanese rural village called Hinamizawa, where every year, they would hold the Watanagashi Festival. But during that time, there is also an indirect tradition where on that day, someone dies and another disappears. In the summer of 1983, we follow a group of school kids and all the different possibilities of how the days around the festivals went, all while slowly learning about the Oyashiro-sama curse and how it ultimately affects some of them, even leading to their demise. In the 2006 anime, the way that it is structured is that it would tell a series of story arcs, and they all follow a bit of a pattern. While the killer and the subject may change, it begins pretty quaint as we see the friends all together and living their lives. Kind of like a slice-of-life comedy with some cute moments that can make you laugh. But then things get a little more serious when someone brings up the Oyashiro-sama curse, and we slowly get to know about what it could be. Then the horrors start to creep in once people start dying, and the show's main character, Keiichi Maribara's situation becomes dire. Then finally, Keiichi's life is now on the ropes, as the curse is presumably coming for him, and one way or another, does not get a happy ending. And once that arc is over, the cycle then repeats itself where we rewind the time and start a new arc. During my viewing, this admittedly can be pretty jarring when going into a new story. You've just witnessed a gruesome set of murders, and now the series wants to continue as if nothing happened. Now it's back to all fun and games, and everyone's back to life with no explanation. all while you're simultaneously trying to process what you've just witnessed and dreading what could possibly be the next horrific death.
前原さん、あんたまさか喉をひっかいたりしてはいないでしょうね。
Well, I think I'm scarred for the next few days after what I've just witnessed. Okay, well, on to the next story arc. So, what fresh hell awaits me this time? Oh boy!
And yet, as terrifying as they may get, there's just something about these arcs that's very well built and engaging, mainly because of how with each one, we get to learn more about the characters and the village. Yes, we do see them in their regular lives and their positively playful side, but at the same time, we see how they are outside of school, their family and their personal history, and even some of their weaknesses, where the latter presents how that can be pushed to the brink and cause the character to snap.
助けてあげるからね話して
Oh, and did I forget to mention that you'll also learn stuff that you wish you never have? I can honestly live my life without knowing this side of her exists. But anyways, it's just so fascinating to watch because with every new piece of info you get to learn, the more you feel like you're one step closer to understanding the big question of why. Why is it that these characters snap and cause them to go on a killing spree? By that point, it makes you question about the show's reality and try to figure out what is the Oyashiro-sama curse in the first place. Is there an actual curse in the village caused by demons? Do some of the people suffer from a mental illness? Is there a secret organization behind the village that's pulling the strings? Is it aliens that crash landed and are controlling people like the body snatchers? Actually, let's forget about that last one. That would be completely stupid.
まるでどこかの B 級映画ですね。
But regardless of what it could be, that element of mystery is the key to the show's suspense and terror. What you don't know is as terrifying as what you see on screen, and it keeps everything a surprise where you never know what's going to happen next. You don't know if some people are either now a friend or a foe. You don't know who's going to die, and you don't know how all of this ends. Maybe it's just a few characters that are murdered. Maybe it's the whole freaking village that got exterminated. Anything is possible with this show. And that's what keeps the experience so intense, where nothing can prepare you for the next bloody outcome, and who among these kids is the next killer.
私自分でも知ってたんじゃないかこんな私はもうとっくに鬼だったんだって
On a side note, one thing that it does cleverly to emphasize the mood of the stories is with the animation, especially with how it can be deceiving. At first, this looks like your ordinary slice-of-life anime. Sure, maybe the girls are a bit off-putting with their ridiculously big goo-goo eyes, and some of their voices are so high-pitched that you're half convinced that some of the cast is a rubber chicken.
それでね明日ねみーちゃんとレナでお散歩しながらケイチくんにひなみ沢を案内してあげようよってことになってしょうがないですわねせっかくですから私もご一緒して差し上げましたよみんなおはようなのですピパー
嘘なんか But other than that, Hinamizawa is a pleasant-looking place, looking like an authentic Japanese rural town and using vivacious colors to give a sense of comfort. Not to mention how it's not afraid to get silly and get a little cartoony with the kids' mischief.
まあせいぜい次回の罰ゲームは覚悟しておくことですわさとこちゃんのメイドかいいよお持ち帰り
However, once the curse enters the scene, even the visual tone gets dark. The designs become less cutesy and more threatening, the colors are more muted, and the action ramps up to become a matter of life and death. I gotta give credit to the directing here by Chiaki Kan because she knows very well how to deceive people both narratively and visually.
あの時一つ叶えてあげたけど
やっぱりダメ。
This is one of those shows that loves to mess with your mind, constantly freaking you out as it's only giving you crumbs of information, one by one, while it still goes out on its killing spree. And yet, eventually, you will have to know all the answers, right? Like, it can only give you so many crumbs until it inevitably gives you the entire piece of bread. One way or another, all the answers will have to be revealed. And this is where Kai comes in, to pull back the curtains in order to present you the truth of the entire situation.
It's worth noting that Kai is Japanese for solution, and that is exactly what its purpose is, to give you the solutions to all of your questions that you had in the previous series. In fact, it puts all of the horror elements aside to have more time to explain itself and show why everything you witnessed was happening. And after going through dozens of episodes and witnessing several gruesome anime murders, were the answers and the conclusion ultimately satisfying? Kind of? It's tough to explain. Actually, let me clarify that I'm not going to say any specific spoilers, so I'm not going to ruin the surprise for anyone. Anyways, I will give it credit that it did do a good job in patching up all the holes and clarifying everything that happened in the series. Whatever happened to certain characters, what are their actual roles, what actually is the Oyashiro-sama curse, even explaining why the show keeps on going through this Groundhog's Day time loop. On top of that, some characters that only had minor roles before now take center stage where their story is actually the main cause of all that is happening. And while it answers your questions, the story becomes more linear where now it's the mission to ultimately get a happy ending, showing the kids working together to stop the source of the problem and have a chance to all live when this is over. Admittedly, after going through so many episodes and learning a lot about the characters that we've been following, this is also pretty engaging because after suffering through violent torture after violent torture, it would be nice to see a conclusion where it doesn't end in bloodshed and everybody can walk out okay. However, at the same time, I wouldn't say that the explanations are all great. Sure, the reason for the Oyashiro-sama curse makes a lot of sense and does logically clarify how people in the village can suddenly snap and go insane. However, the reason for the time reset feels a bit out of place as one of the very few supernatural elements in a series that mostly keeps itself down to earth. It's not as ridiculous as aliens, but not far off either. Also, it's weird how it plays those elements so casually like it could be a part of everyday life. I mean, is nobody going to talk about why the new girl has horns on her head? Okay, very nice. Can we try one more take? And, by the way, really let out that shyness. Like, you are not ready for your first day of school, and you just can't get the words out easily. Like, you really gotta force it out of your system. You get what I mean? Awesome. Okay, let's go for another take. And... rolling? But honestly, it's not just the quality of some of the answers that I'm not happy with. Actually, the fact that I got the answers in the first place is what gives me a bittersweet feeling. Sure, it does a good job explaining everything, but at the same time, it does spoil a bit of what made the first series so frightening. Like I said before, a big part of the scare factor is what we don't know. The mystery of why all this is happening and what could be the Oyashiro-sama curse. Now that we know what is actually happening in Hinamizawa, I don't know if I could revisit the series and have the same sense of fear or be as engaged as I was the first time. Even looking back now, the psychotic moments don't seem as bad now that we know what's wrong. In a way, it's like the great and powerful Oz. He's absolutely menacing at first, but then when the curtains get pulled and you see how all those effects work, that image of him as a great threat is suddenly all gone.
However, this is not to say that the ending and all those answers ruined this for me. This is still a very solid series, and it gave me quite an unforgettable ride that very few animated projects were able to go and accomplish. And yet, there's still that feeling in me where if I ever do choose to go and revisit When They Cry and watch all those episodes again, I'm just not sure if I would ever get that same experience that I had the first time that I watched it.
When They Cry is a greatly built series that knows how to scare you as much as it can get you engaged. With its unusual narrative flow and solidly made animation that can deceive you, this series knows how to mess with your mind with its shocking imagery and always leaving you guessing about what's going on until the very end. Maybe the conclusion is not as satisfying as the journey, but it did manage to resolve everything and made sure you leave with all that you need to know. This is probably not an anime for everyone, as I'm sure not everybody is a fan of blood and fear, but for horror fans, this will be one heck of a thrill ride that's worth their time. Not fully sure if this is the kind to watch again and again to feel the same sense of dread, but even that one time alone will be an unforgettable experience. Just like subscribing to my channel where I regularly post videos that deliver that same unforgettable experience. In a good way, of course. As for my rating, I'm gonna have to combine some numbers. The 2006 series easily gets a 9 out of 10, and I'd give Kai a 7. So overall, it's an 8 out of 10 for me. I know I've explained why I may not come back to this show again, but I do have another reason.
You see this right here? This is scary. I don't want to see this again because this is scary. Now, don't get me wrong, it is still very good. It is still very well done, but she scares me. Yeah, she's a pretty girl, but I feel like I look at that face and I feel like I am going to die. Now, if you excuse me, I am gonna go and hide from the scary. Thank you for the anime, but that's enough scariness for me. I'm gonna go and hide here. She'll never find me here.